There's a neat phrase towards the end of Psalm 30 where it says that God turns our wailing into dancing. It's a pretty well-known phrase, and it's a very hopeful phrase for a lot of people who are currently in some very hard situations. Wailing, of course, is the kind of deep, powerful crying, sobbing when your heart is entirely heavy or entirely shattered or broken. And that God turns our wailing into dancing. Well, that's good news. I want to emphasize just a unique part of that. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me if it's the word that I tell you, if it represents something good or bad. Are you ready? Polio. Polio is a pretty powerful disease. There's no cure for polio. It can be incredibly debilitating for anybody who has it. It's very unlikely that you've ever had polio or will ever get polio because a polio vaccine was developed a long time ago. But I think most people would hear the word polio and say, well, that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. Well, a number of years ago, I was watching television, and the show that I was watching was done, and a news show came on, and they were having a story about polio. And they were saying how doctors were using polio to cure brain cancer. That when they found a tumor in the brain, and they were during surgery, they would insert into the tumor polio, not the polio vaccine, but polio itself. And they discovered, and I don't know how they discovered this, they discovered that when they would do that once the polio hits the tumor, it would start to kill the tumor and eventually kill the tumor, and it would also kill the polio that was there. And so everything would die, everything bad would die, the tumor and the polio. There'd be no trace of either one. And so it would heal patients that have cancer tumors in their brain. I'm not sure where this has gone or how prominently they're using this, or if it works for everybody. I don't know. But I do know that something that a lot of people would identify as bad actually turned out to be the very good thing that provides a lot of benefit for people. Something nobody would have seen coming. It reminds me of the passage in Romans 8, the well-known passage that God works all things out for the good of those who love him. And that passage, the way that it's worded originally, it's really that God causes all things to work together with him for good. Like even the bad things, even the difficult things, even the things in life that we would call very, very bad, they are so submissive to God's will that God uses them to work together with him to accomplish the good things. So the bad things are actually accomplishing the good things, and in a sense, the good things that result from those things never would have come about if it hadn't been for the bad things. And Jesus' resurrection has so many cool things like that. Like when Jesus rose from the dead, the cross that caused so much grief and so much pain and so many tears for the disciples and those who saw him, turned into like the focal point of our faith and the basis for their confidence as they went forward into the world with the gospel, fully confident that God loved them on that cross. And so the thing that was bad turned into something very, very good. As Jesus was hanging on the cross, maybe looking from Satan's perspective, maybe that was one of the best possible moments for Satan. So we'd call it very, very bad. But now we call it such a good thing because it was the day that Satan was overcome. The bad thing turned into the good thing. Or like death itself. So many of you have so many experiences with death. Or maybe just one very, very sad one. And you'd call that bad. The resurrection of Jesus turned that bad thing into the moment of our joyful, hopeful anticipation when we will see our loved ones again. Our death is now the red carpet into eternity with Jesus, into eternity with perfection. And so God has this great way of taking these things that are bad and not just stopping them and overcoming them, but using them to accomplish the good thing, just as many, many different ways of reminding us that everything that threatens you, everything that weighs you down, everything that hurts, your God is above it. Your God is above it. It's not bigger than your God. Your God is using it. He's overseeing it. And he's forcing it, even against its will, to serve you in some way that maybe only God sees right now. And if you start wondering, well, why is he allowing that to happen? You start getting into the whys, and I wouldn't do that if I were God's. Those kind of statements. Just remember what was right before the resurrection. It was the definitive showing of God's love for you. He's earned our trust because he's proven his love. And your problems, your struggles, your worries, the heaviness, just like he turns our wailing into dancing, your God knows that they're there. And just wait. The dancing is coming. Rest well tonight, my friends.